Topic for this preliminary session second is flow of philosophical thoughts between India and Far Eastern countries, historical perspective. I will request Chair Professor S.R. Bhatt to come and give his thoughts so that we can proceed with our second preliminary session. Professor S.R. Bhatt.
Distinguished delegates, welcome to this special session on flow of Indian philosophical thoughts to Far East Asian countries. Philosophizing in India has been quite ancient and also varied. Right from the Vedic thought, our seers, sages, and thinkers have indulged in philosophizing. They have been both intuitive as well as argumentative. On the basis of intuitive realizations, they apprehended the true nature of reality, not this superficial form of reality, but the essence of reality. And that's why we define a rishi as mantra drashta. Rishyaha mantra drashtaraha. An intuitive apprehension is always holistic, not piecemeal. We apprehend the total reality in all its facets and dimensions. But after having experienced the reality in its totality, we may examine our experiences of reality in a piecemeal manner. And there comes the role of reason and arguments. Reasoning and argumentation is not holistic. It is analytical, and it analyzes some part or the other of our experiences. But that is also valuable. In fact, we have in India 3 steps of philosophizing. I call them as iksha, anviksha, and pariksha. Iksha stands for intuitive realization. Iksha is also a synonym of drish, to visualize, to apprehend. So we begin with the experience, and we, in a, again, holistic framework, talk of empirical experience as well as trans-empirical experience. And therefore, we make a distinction between 2 types of knowledge, aparavidya and paravidya. So, we begin with iksha, intuitive realization, and then we reflect upon them. That is known as anu-iksha, anviksha. Anu means that which comes after. So first iksha and then anviksha. Reasoning, argumentation. And this reasoning or argumentation has to be examined. We do not accept any proposition which is unexamined in philosophy. Philosophy is a critical reflection upon our experiences and their examining. So we have pariksha. Pari samanta, we examine our experiences and our analysis of experiences in all its aspects. And that's why we have developed a particular method known as Vada Vidhi for conducting pariksha. This ancient mode of philosophizing continued even in modern times, and Indian philosophical thought has been so subtle, so I should say deep, and also so sublime. In fact, a rishi of the Yajurveda says about Indian philosophy, Sa Prathama Sanskruti Vishwavara. It's the oldest philosophy in the world and is something which should be emulated by the world. It has some inherent vitality, inherent qualities, because of which it is acceptable not only within India but also outside India. And there has been, therefore, the flow of Indian philosophical thought all over Asia. And not only Asia, there was intense interaction with the Greek thinkers also. But since we are presently confined to Asian mode of philosophizing, we'll just take into account how Indian philosophy and for that matter Indian culture went outside India. Initially, the Vedic culture, which is the most ancient, went to all Asian countries through sea route. India had a very strong commercial tradition, both in terms of agriculture and industry, and also Indian jewels, pearls, etc. were also exported to other foreign countries, and it was through sea route. Along with the merchants in the boats, the thinkers also went to those foreign countries and propagated Indian philosophy. And that's why we have pockets of adherents of Vedic tradition in even now in some of the countries of Asia. So it was a Vedic thought which first went abroad and paved the way for the advancement of Buddhism in those countries. In fact, while in Shanghai, I went to a library, and long back, there was British rule for about 40 years in Shanghai, and they had established the Royal Asiatic Society of North China. And in that, there was one article which I read, and I have a copy of it still. I have quoted it in my books also, that before the advent of Buddhism, adherents of Vedic religions were there, and they paved the way for acceptance of Buddhism. And the author has compared Vedic religion with Taoism or Taoism of China. The point, therefore, is that we had a spread of Vedic philosophy, and thereafter Buddhist thought went. And not only Buddhist thought went to these countries, it was modified, transformed when it encountered with the local culture of these countries. So Buddhism was Sinicized in China. We have a different form of Buddhism in Vietnam. We have different form of Buddhism in Korea or in Japan. All these are basically Buddhist, which means the fundamental tenets are the same. But the way these tenets have been expounded and elaborated, there lies the innovation. So we may therefore legitimately talk of Indian Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Vietnamese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism, and so forth. There is identity in terms of basic postulates, basic tenets, but there are differences as well in terms of innovative contributions. We have, since we have some scholars from Korea, Professor Lee and others are there. Well, in Korea, there is a legend that in 1st century, a princess of Ayodhya went to Korea and married King Suru of Korea. And the Kims and the Lees are the descendants of the conjugal relation between princess of Ayodhya and King Suru of Korea. Well, we Indians don't know about it much, but the Koreans know about it. Some of them say it is historical fact, some of them say it is just a legend, whatever it is well recorded. And a few years back, a team of Korean doctors came to Ayodhya, took the blood samples, compared the blood samples with the Kims of Korea, and found that the genes were similar, some sort of genetic affinity. In one of my books also, I have dwelt on this particular point. And we had a few months back a conference in Korea, in Seoul. And there I presented this particular perspective, but Professor Mishra was also present, and he presented another perspective, that the princess was from South India, not from Ayodhya. Anyway, the popular story is that the princess is from Ayodhya. In Ayodhya now we have a monument of King Suru and Queen Her. Her Korean name is Her. From Korea, Buddhism went to Japan. And we have another anecdote, written one, well documented, wherein the king of Peche sent a letter to the king of Japan saying that Buddhism has directly come from India, and it is a religion which is redemptive in nature, and therefore must be accepted by Japanese people also for their well-being. In my book, again, I have quoted that particular letter. The point, therefore, is that from India, Buddhism went to not only Sri Lanka or Thailand or Cambodia and Laos and these countries. It also went to Vietnam directly. There were initially good exchanges of scholars between India and Korea. Some people from India went to Korea, and some people from Korea came to India to learn Buddhism. And same is the case with Japan also. So from Korea it went to Japan. Of course, later on, Chinese influence was also there. But my hunch is that it was initially directly introduced from India. And it is for the researchers now to verify this particular assertion on my part. And I hope young scholars may take up research in this particular area as to how there was a flow of Indian thought, both Vedic and Buddhist, directly from India to these Asian countries. From India, Buddhism went to Tibet, and to our great benefit, most of the Buddhist literature produced in India is lost. It was burned when the library of Nalanda was burned. But this literature was translated in Tibetan. And exact translation was possible because we have a Mahavyutpatti Shastra, which is giving exact equivalent between Sanskrit and Tibetan. And now we are getting these texts restored gradually. Particularly, we have a Tibetan Institute of Higher Studies in Sarnath, which is undertaking this particular task under Ministry of Culture. So, Tibet became a repository of Buddhist thought produced in India. And same is the case with China. We have many such works, Buddhist texts, which are not available in India in Sanskrit, but they are available in translation in China. Because Kumarajiva translated many manuscripts, Yuan Sang translated many manuscripts, and thereafter also there were many Chinese scholars who translated Buddhist texts in Chinese. In fact, in Japan also, we have very good scholars, even in modern times, who are studying Buddhist texts. And therefore, just 1 minute. Hello? मैं अभी मीटिंग में हूँ. So, there has been tremendous flow of Indian philosophical thought, and it was not just Buddhism. Well, we have literature of Nyaya Vaisheshik system also available in China. We have Sankhya and Yoga literature also available in China. Later on, Vedantic thought also had its influence on Asian mind. The point therefore is that we have an appreciable number of Indian philosophical texts available in translation in Asian countries. And it's not a matter of pride, but it's a matter of both satisfaction and academic enterprise that we should know as to how Indian philosophical thought could go to these countries. Well, the spread of Indian culture was not through sword, not by force. It was a willing acceptance by both the masses as also the rulers. Many kings were protectors of Vedic religion and also Buddhist religion. Buddhism was accepted, for example, in Korea as a state religion also. And it is time that there is more and more cultural exchanges between India and Asian countries in particular. Of course, I don't want to dichotomize that Asia and Europe and America, but since we are part and parcel of the Asian continent, therefore there is more affinity. We are cultural cousins, I would put it like that, and therefore the cousins should come together, constitute an extended family, and there should be more and more such exchanges. That's why we are organizing these Asian philosophical conferences, and we hope that these conferences will continue to be held, and we shall have more and more interaction for our, not only for our mutual benefit, but also for the well-being of the entire human race. Because the ideas and ideals propagated in Indian culture are for universal good, not for Indians. We don't say God bless India. We say God bless the whole humanity. Sarve bhavantu sukhina. That has been our ideal, and I hope that we shall enhance this ideal and practice it also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sir, you have given a very good information that I think, at least I never knew it, maybe others would know it, but it's a very valuable information. So now I will call first speaker, Professor Ravichandran Moorthy, University of Kebangsaan, Malaysia. Please greet our speaker with claps.
Professor Bhatt, the chairman of the session, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. On the outset, let me thank the organizers for the invitation for me to be here today. I've been involved in the actually bioethics fraternity in India for the last 10 years through UNESCO with collaboration with Professor Paneerselvam. And that collaboration has brought me to many places in India. And now I'm here for the first time in Mumbai, in Surat, sorry. Professor Bhatt mentioned about very succinctly about, very clearly about the spread of Indian philosophy, culture, religion, and language to much part of Asia. He was looking at more of the eastern part of Asia. Now, I come from a region, of course, I'm of Indian origin. My grandparents migrated to Malaysia some 120 years ago. So I'm a Malaysian in that sense. There are two types of migration that happen from India to much part of Southeast Asia. The first migration took place during the 13th, 14th, and 15th century. And these were the Indian traders. Generally, they are the spice traders who left India and went to Far East, especially in Southeast Asia, right up to China, Straits of Malacca, the South China Sea, looking for trade. So trading was the instrument that brought religion, culture, value system to much part of not only the mainland Southeast Asia, countries like Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the good professor was mentioning, but also on the archipelagic Southeast Asia, which we call the Malay world, right? The Malay world, talking about the Indonesian archipelago, including Malaysia, all right? Right up to the Pacific Ocean. And of course, I do not know whether the Indian philosophy has spread to the Pacific Ocean, to the Polynesian island and Melanesian island. Probably some people can do research in that as well. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a small community, because the topic which was given, actually, the theme was actually the far-reaching influence of Indian philosophy, right, in other regions. So I'm going to talk to you about a small community of Indians. This is not the second generation of migration that my forefathers came, but a few hundred years before that, all right, in the 15th century, a group of people called the Chittis, all right? And they were traders. They were actually traders. Let me just go through, okay? They were actually traders. And they were trading, and those days, trading was very much dependent on the monsoon, all right? They're very much dependent on the monsoon. So they will be traveling for a couple of months in Southeast Asia, and they have to wait for another 6 months before they could return to India, all right? And a group of people decided to marry the locals, the local Malays, the Javanese, the Bhatt people of Southeast Asia, and they began to take domicile. They start to stay. And eventually this group of people cut off because of the caste issues and being married to other people. They cut off their relations with India. So eventually they became a kind of a hybrid community. Very interesting, a hybrid community. And they are somewhere in Malaysia. If you know Malacca, many of you may have been to Malacca. The Straits of Malacca is named after the state which I was born called Malacca. All right? And that is the port city in the 14th and the 15th century. And these people domicile in that area. So I'm going to talk to you about these people, the Chittis. Okay? Who are the Malacca Chittis? All right? We call them the Malacca Chittis. All right? These are the group of people who have been there from the 15th century, largely spice traders. Okay? As Malacca became more prominent in the Malay archipelago, growing number of traders, including the Hindus from the Coromandel coast, visited many ports in Southeast Asia, including the Malacca port. Okay? Now, as I mentioned to you, through intermarriages between the Hindu traders and the Malay, the Chinese, the Javanese, the Bhatt, all right, became more frequent. Thus, the Malacca Chitti community was born. The Malacca Chitti community looks a bit different from the usual way that the Indian look. All right? We have Chinese-looking Indians, right? Those who are from Assam and Shillong, that area. And they look a bit of a mix as well. So, so you can't really, the facial characteristics is no longer Indian per se, but there are some mixture with the local culture. Now, what is interesting about this community that I need to tell you? This community have lost many of their systems or traditions, all right? So what they have adapted, all right? They have adapted. They have lost the language, so they do not speak any Indian languages, okay? They only speak the Malay language. They adapted to that as well, all right? The way that they attire themselves are Malay attire. They have songs and rituals are all accustomed to Malay, but they have remained steadfastly as Hindus. And there is a very old temple, one of the oldest temple in Malaysia, which is the Pudaya Vinayagar temple in Goldsmith Street in Malacca, is actually belongs to this community. Of course, now it is run by the wealthier, the Chettiar community, but it belongs to that community. So very interesting, although they have lost or they have adapted language, other aspects like food, clothing, and even because of the intermarriages, they don't look like Indians, but they have maintained the value system pertaining to religion, all right? And together with it, the caste system, all right? And it's very interesting. There are only about 200 of them left in Malacca, all right? They live in a small village. I will show you the village soon after this. This is the village. I think you can see in the screen. That's the entrance to the village. You have the elephant statue. Elephant is called because that place is called Gajah Berang. Gajah means elephant, Berang means angry. Angry elephant village. And that is the land given by the Dutch. So there are about 200 families there, all right? They still reside in that area. There are about, this was taken about 5 years ago when I did my research in that community. That's me with a blue shirt. And that is a community leaders, okay? So very interesting, the way that they speak Malay language. There is no Indian slang. There's nothing Indian about them except for their names. They also have two names. They have one Tamil or Indian name as well as one Malay name. All right? Very interesting community. And these are some of their people. You see the way that they attire themselves. These are the community leaders. All right? The last leader has also, Tega Raja has also passed away. Now, this is the adornment. You see the way that they attire themselves. They have adopted. They have embraced the local culture. In fact, their language also has been different. But they are also steadfast Hindus. There is a temple within the community. I forgot the name of the temple. It's an Amman temple, right? And in Malay, we call Datuk Chacha. Datuk Chacha here meaning whenever people get this chicken pox or, they will go, after that they will go to that temple. And it's quite a famous. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. So very interesting. I've been to that temple. All the rituals are done in Malay, but they have a Hindu priest from India. So the recitation of the hymns and things of that will be in Sanskrit, done by an Indian priest. So this is the culture. They still maintain the Hindu culture. Okay. Now these are some of the things, and they also have what we call village. Because they were they used to be traders, then became farmers. So they also have temples in the fields. In Tamil, you call Gramya Koil. I don't know what's the other thing. That means, but if you go to that place, there is no farming land. It's in the middle of the city, right? But you still have certain structures, okay? Now, these are some of the celebration. And this house here that you can see, that's actually a Hindu house. The Malacca Chitti house. And now it's made into a museum. And that is a temple. That's a temple within the state of Malacca. Okay. Now, let me come back to my argument, which I'm trying to make here, is despite the, despite years of adaptation and embracing a more dominant culture, which is the Malay culture, okay, they have maintained certain worldview, which is predominantly, I would say, an Indian-based worldview. All right. Why do I say that? Okay. Now, this is some of my findings. Other than religion and the philosophy of Indian, I'm not sure how philosophical they are, but they are embracing the Indian religion or the Hindu religion in that sense, has kept them, although distinct from other people, right? They always think of themselves as a heritage community. They also do not really think of themselves as the dominant Tamil community there, all right? So therefore, they maintain their identity, all right, as separate from other Indian ethnicity in Malaysia. But in the same time, they are able to say that, hey, look here, I'm also a Hindu. All right? I think that's quite an interesting finding. All right? Their worldview, essentially a village worldview, all right? Basically centers around temple activities, family functions, also local squabbles. I've seen quarrels between, temple committee. I've observed from far how they quarrel. Of course, everybody quarrels in a temple community, I'm sure in India as well. And there they quarrel with with the Malay language. I was quite, surprised the way that they were quarreling. They speak very beautiful Malay language. So basically, this is actually identity. So their identity is a non-Indian. They do not see themselves as Indian, but they see themselves as a Chitti community, as a community on their own, as a hybrid community. All right, which is religiously Indian. All right, they are Hindus. All right, okay, let me just go through the concept of modernization. Okay, now essentially they are not business people now, and there are no political leaders, or rather prominent leaders that come from this community. Okay, so they were usually clerical workers. Some of them have migrated to Singapore, all right? So it is a dwindling kind of diminishing community. Because they cannot identify themselves with a major religion or a major community, they tend to intermarry. Many of them marry the Tamilians. So then the following generation will eventually become Tamils in that sense, okay? But they are trying their best to maintain culture. The government also recognized this community as a distinct from other Tamil communities, right? So therefore, they have certain privileges. Now, again, these are some of the findings that I had about the global values. Let me just talk to you about this concept of Bumiputra in Malaysia. And a lot of you know about this concept of preferential treatment. So this community also requests, or rather they demand for that special status. The government have not given them the status yet, but they have given other privileges. But they think of themselves, they say they are not the Indians who came in the 17th century and the 18th century who worked in the plantations, but they were distinct, all right? And in fact, these are the people, initial people who contributed to the economy of the state of Malacca in that sense. Many of these people, some of them became, in the early days, were bendaharas or the prime ministers. Bendahara means prime minister of Malacca. They were Muslims nevertheless, some of them, all right? So they have contributed to the political system, the economic system of the country. Okay, fully educated, no. So some of the challenges that they speak with the community, I would like to go beyond that and also talk to you about something else. Go beyond Malacca and also talk about Malaysia and Indonesia. I'll take this opportunity if I have the time. Do I have, how many more minutes? 2 to 3 minutes, okay. Now, Professor Bhatt rightfully mentioned the spread of Indian philosophy, essentially through religion, to many parts of the archipelagic. And if you were to look at Malaysia and Indonesia pretty much, the challenges are there. Although right now, you know, I mean, in grandeur, in retrospect, we talk good about it. But there are challenges as well, all right? Challenges essentially coming from Islamization of Southeast Asia, all right? While the Hindu philosophy embraces everybody, things of that sort, there is also challenges, especially in Malaysia, that you find that the Malays who were at one time Hindus and Buddhists, I don't say totally rejecting, but feel that their Indian heritage or Indian past is not so important. All right? We see that also happening in Indonesia, but Indonesia is a bit more open society probably because of their socialist ideology earlier. All right? They are embracing more. So you find that if you go to Yogyakarta and Perambangan, where you have the Borobudur and all that, they have, you know, very Hindu Buddhist kind of Hindu worship, like for example worship of volcanoes. Although while they are Muslims, all right, they are Muslims, but also they have Indian rituals, all right, or Indian-based ritual that exists together with the religion, okay, and I think that eventually will go off also. That's my reading coming from the region. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here, and thank you for listening. I'll take some questions after that.
Thank you very much, Professor Ravichandran Moorthy.